Hello everyone, welcome back to the TJOmega channel for day 1026 of our daily content grind. Today, it is time for the best toys of the year 2000. It was a special time where Japan was getting back into the cars. We were continuing Beast Wars with misplaced hope. And Y2K happened by doing absolutely nothing. So it's a fun year to discuss, however, not without a little bit of debate. So, if we had followed the rules to this point and done first run molds within that year, then car robots would be up against beast machines, and let's be honest, car robots would stomp beast machines completely, and we probably wouldn't talk about any of those toys. That also would mean that 2001 would be an exceptionally dull year because all of the toys done in 2001 originated in 2000 in Japan, meaning my best of 2001 would contain first run spy changers, which have no business being in a list like that. So, I put it to a poll over on Twitter. It was half and half, but it did lean one way. I put it to a poll here on YouTube, and it was a little bit more one-sided. So what we are going to be doing for the year 2000 is break the rules a little bit. We are going to focus on American-released toys only in the year 2000. This way, both the 2000 and the 2001 lists are a little bit more accurate to what the best toys of the year actually were. Otherwise, I think it would be a very unfair list, and I'll be honest, Beast Machines deserves at least some mention. There also happens to be a few leftovers from Beast Wars we can talk about too, so I think this is going to make it a little bit more fair all the way around. So, with all that clarified, let us begin. These are the top 10 toys of the year 2000, and we're going to start simple with a basic class Viacon, because you know what, after going through 4 years of Beasts, it's nice to just have a car again. Mirage is a really nice, simple figure. I mean, nothing terribly complex about how it's done, but it just felt right, you know? Like, the Beast Wars at that point I'd grown attached to. I really did like the toys overall by then. However, there's that part of my brain that just says, I want to have a vehicle transformer again. And lo and behold, that's what Viacons were for a lot of us. And Mirage is a nice step in that direction. Nothing terribly complicated, some pressure-launched missiles for the gimmick, and just an overall nice look. He fits with the Viacon aesthetic really well. I really like the dark blue that they came up with for the color. Makes the yellow pop really hard, gives him a really distinct look. Really like it. It's almost like a very darkened version of Mirage, which is counterpoint to like the bright red they originally decided to do this in. Go look that up. It's an interesting look. Beyond that, it's just a fun little figure. Nothing terribly involved about it, but it worked well. It felt nice, and yeah, it was just good to see that after all these years, Hasbro could still do a vehicle transformer, but they could also incorporate all of the new engineering levels and articulation that we come to expect after Beast Wars. Great little figure, and a good place to start for the list. A lot of people are divisive on the first waves of the Maximals in this toy line, and for good reason. A lot of them are very unusual. It's a very different aesthetic. You either love it or you hate it. And especially if you do show-accurate characters, which didn't exist in the first year. However, when you go to the non-show characters, you get into some interesting territory. Things like Skydive, for instance. This was a first. Keep in mind, dinosaurs had been relegated to just being Predacons in the original, with the exception of Dinobot. So Beast Machines actually gave them a chance to create maximal-oriented characters who were reptilian, or they were dinosaurs, and it's a great little way of expanding. Skydive's a really interesting design himself. He's tall, he's lanky, you know, he kind of does... He fits. He's outside the mold of what we typically expected of a Beast toy at the time, but he comes together really nice. I actually like how they did him. He's a very fierce-looking character. I like the blades coming out of the forearms. That's kind of like a cool Baraka thing. I like that. It's the Beast mode that puts it over for me. It's a Quetzalcoatl, which is such a unique dinosaur. If you're not unfamiliar, it's basically like a flying T-Rex. It's like the T-Rex of aerial dinosaurs. Very cool dino, and it makes for a pretty cool and unique toy. I do think there are repaints that make it even better than this, but this is the first run, and the orange and blue is still nice, so absolutely needs to be here. While we do knock these first-run Beast Machines toys for their inaccuracy to how they looked on the show, that doesn't necessarily mean the toys themselves were bad. A lot of these toys that were off-model from how the character looked in the cartoon could still be fun to play with. Case in point, Deluxe Thrust. I actually really, really like this toy. Admittedly, kind of limited in some areas like the legs, but I really, really like how the toy was ultimately done. The low, sleek motorcycle is a really cool looking vehicle. I like the yellow and the purple. That would become an iconic color scheme of motorcycle Transformers in just a couple years. But overall, I like the variety that you have here. I like the little pincers with the launching missile. I like the scanning gimmick of, like, when you roll it, the head goes left and right as if it's looking for a maximal. I like that you can give him this, like, 3-wheel mode along with, standard legs, or you can give him a unileg mode like he had in the cartoon. That's a lot of little things that you can do with this toy. Looks a little bit odd, yes, but I do think it makes up for it with the fact that it's just a fun toy. To a surprising degree. I picked one up just a couple years ago for the first time, and I'm surprised at how much I liked it. It caught me off guard. So, yeah, it's not accurate to the show. But sometimes, show accuracy is not all it's cracked up to be. Sometimes you just have to be a fun toy. Beast Wars was not quite done in the year 2000. There were a few stragglers from the Fox Kids run of repaints. However, there were also a few molds left over, not from Beast Wars, from Animorphs, which created the Beast Wars mutants and toys like Poison Bite. This was fascinating. So the idea, if you're not familiar, was the Animorph toy. It makes perfect sense. It is the ability to go from one animal to another without it going to a human form. So you get a Transformer with 2 beast modes, no robot mode. But since the molds were already done and they wanted to extend Beast Wars just a little bit longer, they produced these for Beast Wars, and Poison Bite is a fascinating one. The Barracuda mode looks wicked. I love how that comes together. And then the Scorpion might be the best Scorpion Transformer we had to that point. It just looks really, really cool. It's a little bit alien. It's a little bit exotic. I really, really like how it came together. It's a weird one. And I love some of these mutants when they are very widely contrasted from what they actually are. A Scorpion and a Barracuda, very, very different. Aside from the fact, we didn't get many fish Transformers during Beast Wars. Weird way to finally work one in. It's just an interesting toy. Just the look and play of it is just so different. And that's what the mutants excelled at. So, not the only time they're going to show up on this list, but you gotta keep watching to find out where another one might land. Beast Machines was the first time Hasbro really toyed with the idea of creating multiple sizes for the same character, meaning kids had something affordable to buy and still get a character from the cartoon, while collectors or birthdays and holidays would come around so you could get the kid the big one. Jetstorm, at the deluxe size, manages to be a pretty solid toy despite being a shrunken down version of his Ultra Class figure. The launching missiles make for some pretty basic gimmickry, but you do still have the neck gimmick, which is also spring-loaded, so it can look left and right should you want it. And again, it can do the unileg, the floating mode that it had in the cartoon. Again, this is very not show accurate. Obviously, Jetstorm from Beast Machines looked very different, did not have this striking dark blue and yellow color scheme. That just seems to be a Beast Machines thing now that I'm taking notice of this. But the toy itself ends up being pretty solid and pretty good. It makes for a really nice Transformer at the deluxe size, and the jet mode itself is really dense and cool looking too. Like, all around, it does a pretty good job, and I'm very, very happy with how it came out. I first experienced this toy as Universe Skywarp, and went back to get the original later, and you know what? No matter what version, the mold is still fun to mess with. Yeah, absolutely needs to be on the list. You don't always need to be a more expensive toy to end up on a list like this, though, and you don't have to be a gimmick-loaded toy to end up high on the list. This might be the highest a basic figure has made it in one of these, because something that just excels about this is uniqueness and clever engineering. We need to talk about Night Viper. Only the second Transformer to take on a Snake alt mode, and it does so in a very different way than how Kurata was done from Takara. So aside from the fact that it's another Cobra, because of course that's how you get the mass to be able to transform it, it does come with some fun gimmickry. It's got shields that are built in, a hidden blade gimmick, and you even have like a little bit of a neck lunge gimmick built into the Snake mode. What makes it really fascinating as a toy is the way the tail disappears. You notice it doesn't have a whip arm like Kurata. Notice on the Beast mode, it's using one foot as a belly and the other foot is the end of the tail. Somewhere in the middle of that snake body, you can see the pelvis section of this toy, because you have to thread the leg through the pelvis in order to create the snake tail. That's such a weird method of doing it. And like, that's something like, how did you even think of that? It's a really clever and really interesting method of transforming to make the snake work, and it just creates a cool looking figure. You know, the steel, like the titanium blue and the red with the black, it works so well. It's a great little figure with a lot of really clever elements that make it really, really endearing. Yeah, definitely one of Beast Machine's best outputs for the Maximals. We need to take a look at another mutant, and I will admit the mutants are going to be very much to preference. Like I said, I prefer the mutants that are very distinct from one mode to another. You know, the same way I kind of like my triple changers to work. However, when I think about things like that, the first thing in my thought is, how do you get an owl to turn into a bear? How do you do that? Icebird might not be the most original name there is, and the beast modes are absolutely, and I apologize for the pun, polar opposites. But it's the variety that I love. Again, you didn't have many owl transformers back then. To this day, Icebird is the only organic owl in Transformers, the other two being far more mechanical in design. And then, yeah, it's a polar bear that looks absolutely vicious. The red nails, a little bit brutal for both of them, but they are predatory beasts after all. It's just fascinating to me how you actually manage to get an owl and a super bulky bear to actually be in the same robot. It's a fascinating figure, and it offers very different play value from both modes. I think the Beast Wars mutants really were special in a weird way, and I wish some of them, High Soundwave, got a repaint so we could have actually enjoyed them a little bit more. But I will take what we got because they are exceptionally interesting toys. These are my two preferences, Poison Bite and Icebird. I admittedly, Razor Claw also could have ended up on this list somewhere, but we're keeping to my preferences because it's my list. So, Icebird, I'm going to mark as my favorite of the mutants. For the rest of this list, we will be ignoring show accuracy because, well, that's really not fair, because a lot of Beast Machine's designs in the cartoon were changed at the last minute, which is why the toys are inaccurate. Some of them still come close enough to resemble their on-show appearance, though, and that's when we get into toys like Tankor. So, yes, the dark colors, the dark red, this is definitely not Tankor's normal color palette. And unfortunately, I don't believe this is one of the molds that was repainted for Beast Wars Returns in Japan. They went with the basic class version instead, which is physically more accurate to Tankor. But this one does have a universe repaint you could enjoy too. regardless of the color scheme, it's a nice, fun figure. You got a good launching missile gimmick. He also shares, you know, a head turn gimmick of his own. The gimmick I really like is that the front of the tank mode can actually open up. The bumper opens and the hood splits and creates a gap between the two treads. And when you roll it, those buzzsaws on his forearm start spinning. It's a pretty brutal gimmick that looks absolutely awesome. The toy itself is just fun. Like, this is just straight up a fun figure. You know, regardless of how accurate it is to the cartoon, it's a big, burly beast of a robot that does quite a bit for its size scale, and it's just nice, hefty, and again, when you had Beasts for 4 years, it was nice to just get a tank for the first time since, you know, Generation 2 or whenever. It had been a long time. It was nice to feel like it had come back. Tankor is a really solid toy. Inaccurate, yes, but still a lot of fun. Believe it or not, we're this high on the list, and now I need to talk about a Maximal toy. And I need to talk about a Maximal Deluxe class toy. We're not even going to any of the big expensive ones. Did you really think a Cheetor was going to be on here? Most of those Cheetors were problematic. No, again, we get by on clever engineering and just being fun as a toy. And that's Black Arachnia. This is a brilliant little spider toy. If I'm being perfectly honest, if I'm being, like, straight with you guys, I really feel like this is the best spider transformer we ever got. The mold, at least. And now, as far as, like, show accuracy, if she was just a shade or two redder, she'd be show accurate. She'd be the only Wave 1 toy, or let's say early year toy, that was show accurate. But that aside, I love the clever engineering. I love splitting the robot legs to create the spider legs. That takes so much of the bug leg problem away from her robot mode. They worked in the multi-eye gimmick. That's really good. It's just such a creepy and effective spider mode. It just looks and feels so good. And because that spider mode is made up of the arms and legs, you do get quite a bit of posability out of the spider. More than that, because it's using her actual legs, the spider could hold itself up. It's not like her previous toys where she had to lay flat on the ground and you just spread the spider legs out. No, she actually had like the creepy crawly look a spider is supposed to have, which is why I call her the best spider we ever got. That is something that eludes a lot of spider transformers. So, there's a lot to like about the toy. It's a fantastic representation of Black Arachnia, colors notwithstanding, and it's just a fun and really cleverly engineered mold all around. Yeah, my favorite deluxe out of the line, my favorite Maximal out of the line, if we're being honest. Big fun toys usually rule these lists, however, and this year is no different. If we're going to talk about the best Transformer released in 2000, at least as far as the US goes, we need to talk about the Ultra Class Jetstorm. So, just as bulky and solid, if not more so than his original deluxe counterpart, this thing was at least a little bit more show accurate in vehicle mode and color scheme. The blue was the vibrancy that it needed to be. It had a manual head turning gimmick, which worked a little bit better for posing the vehicle mode. Posing the vehicle mode sounds so weird in my head, by the way. That's not typically something that works. Like the Deluxe, it had the Unileg with the hover jets on it. It had a few extra accessories it didn't have. The launching missiles were a little bit better placed over the jet rather than hanging off the arms. And then you also had electronic gimmicks on top of all of that. Yes, if you hold it for too long, the chrome will start cracking and flaking on you. That's just an unfortunate side effect of chrome from that era. However, as long as it held together, as long as you didn't have a whole bunch of blue glitter in your hands afterwards, you usually had a lot of fun with the toy. It's big, it's bulky, it does a lot, it's a very solid figure, and it's worthy of being called the best of 2000. Or at the very least, the best of Beast Machine's first year. We are skirting the rules a little bit for the sake of making these lists a little bit more interesting, because if we're being brutally honest here, Jetstorm might have ended up like 8th or maybe 7th if we included car robots. We might do something to correct that and make a proper list at some point. It's like a bonus video, but first we got to get through this whole marathon of mine. So, that is what I would call the best Transformers of the year 2000. Thank you very much for watching. Join me next time, where we actually get to focus on robots in disguise. You know, toys that came out in Japan in 2000. But it's going to be a more interesting list overall. And there's still a few surprises that are going to sneak their way into that one too. But, as always, thank you very much for watching. I will see you next time.